I'm not going to join the military.
Okay.
Unless I'm drafted. Then I don't have a choice.
Well, you have scoliosis, so you can have a choice.
If they lower the requirement needs, then I'll go. If I get drafted. Ah! Welcome to Stuff That We Like / Joy, at least at this point in time. I'm Caleb.
And I'm Christina.
And we're the Castanettas. And today I'm going to be asking Christina, what's something that you like and enjoy?
Something that I like / enjoy is, who is Joan of Arc? It's not really it's just somebody I'm interested in, and she popped into my head the other day. I'm not sure why. And I was like, I don't really know who Joan of Arc is. So I looked into it, and I'm going to tell you all about it.
So you like the question of who is Joan of Arc?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So do you know who Joan of Arc was?
I think she was a young lady who led a military operation or something back in like the medieval ages.
Wow. That's more.
Am I close?
Yeah, that's more than I knew.
Okay.
I knew that she was a young woman in the Middle Ages that got burned at the stake for heresy. But I didn't know pretty much anything other than that, or like why she was killed. So here's a little bit about Joan of Arc's history.
Let's do it.
So it's just kind of, I'm just going to read through her life story that I wrote up from different sources. So pop in with thoughts or questions, or else I'll just be reading to you for about 8 minutes.
Okay, let's do it.
So Joan of Arc was born around 1412, so over 600 years ago, in Domery, France, which is a small village in northeastern France that you can still go to today.
Jeffrey Dahmery?
No, Domery, France.
Okay, go ahead.
He's dead also.
He is dead.
Yeah. He's with the Lord now.
Mm-hmm. Not burned at the stake, but...
Nope. He grew up, I'm talking about Jeffrey Dahmer. All right, so she grew up during the 100-Year War. Do you know what the 100-Year War was?
It was a war that lasted around 100 years.
So pretty much it was a really long war in between England and its allies and France and its allies.
Okay.
So there was a massive war going on at the time. This was near the end of the 100-Year War when Joan of Arc lived, where England was kind of just trying to take over the world, take over France. It was just a big deal with territorial claims and dynasties and stuff. So her parents were Jacques Arc and Isabelle Romay. They were considered to be peasants, but they were relatively prosperous because they were successful farmers. And that is the last you'll ever hear about her parents. There is pretty much nothing else known about them.
Okay. And I might have missed this. Is she French?
Yes.
Okay.
She grew up in France. In Domery, France.
Got it. That's right.
The Domery
That's
thing
right.
came up.
I was too busy telling my joke. My bad.
It's all good. It's all good. So she grew up in a devout Catholic household and was very well versed in like domestic skills like farm work and sewing and cooking, but she was illiterate, which was common for women of that day. As a child, she was described as being a very pious Catholic and often prayed at local shrines. So around the age of 13, she began experiencing what she described as divine visions and voices. She claimed that these voices were from 3 saints, one being Saint Michael the Archangel, Saint Catherine, and Saint Margaret. So she claimed that these 3 saints were speaking to her, that they would appear in kind of like a bright light, and she would hear them very clearly. Michael the Archangel is a saint associated with warfare, and the other 2 saints were both virgin martyrs. So she claimed that these voices were urging her to accept a mission, which was to save France from the 100-Year War.
I want to pause right here. You just said that they consider Michael the Archangel a saint in Catholicism, even though he's an angel?
That's what I'm reading.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, we can fact check that.
No, that's great. I'll take your word at it.
I thought it was strange too. Yeah, it's Saint Michael.
Okay.
The Archangel. I don't know.
It's all right.
That's what I found. So anyways, these voices from Saint Michael, the angel, and these 2 virgin martyrs were telling her she had to accept a mission to save France from the 100-Year War. And she was to do that in 2 ways, which was to help Charles VII expel the English from France and help him and help ensure that he became the King of France. So Charles VII, he was heir apparent, so his father, the king, had died, but he had not yet been coronated as king due to this war going on. So technically at that time, France didn't have a king, but he was the son of the French king who died. So Charles VII, not yet a king, but it was her mission to help him become the King of France. Also, these saints would speak to her in French, and the visions and the voices would come to her almost daily. And she said that she knew they were divine from God. So as a part of her mission to save France, the saints instructed her to go to Charles VII and help him end the siege on the French city of Orleans. So the English troops at that time were sieging this city called Orleans. And so she was to go to Charles, help him end the siege in the city of Orleans, and make sure he became crowned as King of France. The voices also told her that she should take a vow of celibacy. So she did.
How old was she at this time?
When she was 16, she set forth to complete her divine mission.
Wow.
So
she was 14, 15.
Yep, 13, 14, 15. She was hearing these voices for several years. So she finally, at 16, was like, I got to do this. These saints are talking to me about every day.
Well, you only lived to 40 or 50 back then, so 16, you're almost half your
halfway
life.
there, yeah. Which is funny because people are like, oh yeah, she took a vow of celibacy or she was a chaste virgin. Well, most women at that time did get married around 16, 17, so she actually was taking a stand for something.
This could be the equivalent of a middle-age crisis. Midlife crisis. That's middle age. Both.
Yeah,
middle age and
middle
midlife.
ages. So when she was 16, she set forth to complete her divine mission, and she tried to meet with a local French military commander. His name was Robert de Bardacourt, to ask for his support in her mission to go see Charles VII. But he dismissed her idea. He's like, no, we're not going to do that. So she ended her meeting with him by prophesying that the French would soon be defeated in a major battle. And the French lost that major battle shortly afterwards. And so Robert met with Joan of Arc again, and he's like, okay, I'll take you to meet Charles VII.
That's all it took? There's a 50-50 chance that it would go their way.
Right. Well, apparently she was also very persistent and, had these prophecies and the word from God and the saints. There's a lot going on.
That's probably worth more back then, too.
Yeah. Well, and they were 90 years into this war at this point. So probably.
We'll try anything.
Yes. Yeah. And I believe historians believe that she spoke about the specific battle that it was going to be more than just a major battle. But this was 600 years ago. So some of this could be, tall tales or just lost history. So she was brought before. So this guy, Robert, traveled with her and brought her before Charles VII court, which was extraordinary for a peasant girl to be allowed to meet with the person who was going to become the King of France. And Charles wanted to test her claims that she heard divine voices and was led by God. So he disguised himself as one of his courtiers, just a normal guy in the crowd in his court. And he stood in their midst when Joan entered the chamber where the court was assembled, and she identified Charles immediately. Allegedly, she turned to him, he's just wearing normal clothes, bowed low to him and embraced his knees and declared, God give you a happy life, sweet king.
Wow.
So after that, he took her through some rigorous theological examinations to confirm that she was Catholic and agreed with Catholic theological beliefs. And after that, she was given an armor. She was given armor and a banner that had religious symbols on it, and the role of inspiring troops. Although she didn't command the troops directly, she wasn't given a sword, but she was kind of the rallying person for the French.
Wow.
A few months later, in April 1429, she rallied French troops with her confidence that God was giving them divine guidance, and the French attacked the English who were sieging the city of Orleans, and they won. which is what these saints had been telling her was her mission for 3-4 years at this point, that she was to go to King Charles, or almost the king, and help him end the battle of Orleans. So they did. After this French victory at Orleans, Joan then urged the troops to march towards the city of Reims, which is where French kings are crowned as king. So that was part of the problem of Charles VII. Like, you're supposed to be in this specific city to become king, and it had been under English rule and attacks for years. So after several military victories, the path was cleared, and they made their way to Reims. And on July 17th of 1429, Charles was crowned king, and he became King Charles VII. And Joan was present at his coronation, and at that point, it looked like she had fulfilled a key part of her mission. Well, about a year later, because the war was still happening, the 100-Year War, during a battle, Joan was captured by English allies called the Burgundian. Not quite sure. It's believed they were Germans that lived in France that were siding with the English. She was knocked off her horse, and because she didn't carry a sword, she just carried a banner, she was unable to escape, and she was taken as a prisoner. And English forces saw her as a politically valuable, bargaining chip, because she's the young woman who got Charles to become the king, and she's winning all these battles, kind of a thing. So after 6 months in custody, she was sold to the English for 10,000 gold crowns, which was a lot of money back then. And the English, who were eager to discredit Charles VII's coronation as king, sought to try her as a heretic in hopes of undermining French morale, because the French were doing very well at this point in the war. So she was imprisoned in Normandy, which is actually in France, but it was under English control at that time, under very harsh conditions, and she attempted to escape multiple times. She once jumped out of a tower, but she was recaptured. So shortly after she was in Normandy in custody, she was put on trial for heresy in January of 1431. And although England was also a Catholic nation at the time, they later became Protestant, but they were Catholic at the time. So they weren't putting her on trial because of her Catholic faith. They were doing it mainly because it was politically motivated. The aim of the trial was to prove that Joan's visions were demonic, and therefore that King Charles VII's rule as king was illegitimate, because the way he became king was through this heretic young girl. So she was charged with 70 charges of heresy and witchcraft, 70. And I won't read them all to you, but they included claiming divine visions without the church's approval. So apparently the Catholic Church had to prove that you were hearing divine visions. She was accused of hearing demonic voices instead and following what they had to say. Her military successes were attributed to being through sorcery and witchcraft. She also wore male clothing and armor during battle, which the church considered to be the abomination of cross-dressing. Joan, through the trial, maintained that her voices were coming directly from God, which meant that she was bypassing the Catholic Church's authority of God speaking to Pope and bishops rather than directly to people. And her military banner and her devotion to saints were viewed as idol worship as well. So those are some of the heresy charges. So this all went to trial, and the trial was rigged with biased judges who had already kind of decided on the outcome before it started. And Joan was not given access to a defense counsel at all. But Joan, who was only 19 at the time and illiterate, defended herself very well. So she just kind of was her own defense, and she answered very complex theological questions with great clarity and conviction that she just explained things very well. For example, she was asked if she was in God's grace. And one thing to note, this trial was it was like a religious trial rather than a normal kind of trial for killing somebody or stealing. So it was all very religiously focused on theological aspects. So she was asked if she was in God's grace. And she replied, "If I'm not in God's grace, may God put me there. And if I am, may God keep me in his grace."
That's a good answer.
Yeah. So her insistence on that the voices she was hearing were saints and were real was her main offense. At the end of the trial, she was found guilty of heresy and was facing execution, but she was given this option to sign a document where she admitted her guilt of insisting that she was hearing the voices of divine dead saints, and she promised that she would not continue wearing male clothing. So she signed this paper in exchange for the death penalty being taken off the table. But a couple days later, she resumed wearing male clothing while imprisoned as a sign of her renewed commitment and her mission to free France from the English. So this relapse into heresy sealed her fate, as relapsed heretics automatically face the penalty of execution.
So she signed the paper that said, I won't wear male clothing.
Yeah.
And also what I said was heretical.
Mm-hmm.
And then she wore male clothing directly after that.
Just a couple days later. Yeah. Kind
you
of.
See, I would have started shouting my heretical beliefs and forgotten about the male clothing part. But she went at it the opposite
She's
way.
like, nah, we're going to war. The French are going to take out the English.
Yeah, she wanted to be a Jimmy, not a Joe.
Not a Joan.
That's crazy.
Isn't that wild?
So she signed this and then went back to her heretical beliefs, and that's an automatic death penalty?
Well, yeah, it said that relapsed heretics, face death. So maybe not automatic, but it's like that was on the table. Mm-hmm. If you say you renounce your heretical ways, we are not going to kill you. So she likely would have been imprisoned for a long period of time, something like that. But she was like, okay. And then she's like, you know what? I want to make a stand that the French are going to take out the English. So she put back on her male clothing.
How did she get male clothing?
I don't know. She's in prison. I don't know.
That's the weird part is like, did she make it? She probably made it out of her own clothes or
and
something.
Also, I'm not sure what prison looked like back then. Just like when we were in France and we saw where Marie Antoinette was held and people like that. Some of it was kind of a nicer area, or you might have special places, especially as a young woman in that era. So I don't know. But she put back on those clothes. She's like, we're going to war, baby.
Man, that's crazy.
And they're like, all right, we're going to kill you. So under orders of the English Catholic Church, she was ordered to be executed for heresy. On May 30th of 1431, Joan was burned at the stake. So she was tied to a stake surrounded by wood and set on fire before a crowd. She reportedly called on Jesus' name and clutched a cross made for her by an English soldier, who obviously maybe felt bad for her, but gave her a cross. And her execution, which was meant to be like this political statement of like, the King of France is illegitimate, the English will win the war. It was supposed to be very public and humiliating, but her dignity and her crying out to the Lord and just her composure moved many onlookers to tears. So there weren't like the typical shouts of the crowd being like, heresy or you're a heretic. They were pretty moved by her emotion because she believed in the same God that they all did. After she was killed, her ashes were scattered in the Seine River to prevent them being collected as a religious relic, because it was obvious that even the people in the crowd were like, she's somebody special. Around 20 years later, the 100-year war had ended, and King Charles VII ordered a retrial to clear Joan's name, even though she was already dead. And part of this was also to validate...
Did France win the 100-Year War?
It kind of, I don't know if it necessarily they won it, but it was kind of resolved. I should do a more deep dive. But France, obviously, they got back Normandy and all these other places that England was ruling. So I don't know if they just returned to their previous borders or how that all worked. But anyways, King Charles, he ordered a retrial to clear Joan's name, but also partly to validate his own coronation, that he was the rightful king, because some people were like, she was a heretic. She's the one who made it so that you could become the king. Maybe you shouldn't be the king. So he's like, we need to do a retrial so everybody believes I'm the rightful king. So her conviction of heresy was overturned. They brought it to court and had like over 100 witnesses. I'm not sure what they witnessed of, but I guess that she wasn't a heretic. And after that, she became a symbol of French unity and resistance. It's kind of that image you think of Joan of Arc holding that banner and riding into war. So it was resistance against the English. In 1920, so this was 300 years later, the Catholic Church canonized her as Saint Joan of Arc. and she is to this day the patron saint of France, soldiers, and captives. So, in essence, she became what she heard, which was the voices of virgin Catholic martyr saints, and she became one as well. Years later.
Don't you have to do a miracle to become a saint or to be qualified?
Well, the miracles were hearing the voices of saints, spotting King Charles in the crowd, knowing how to win certain battles. Yeah, and then I think martyrdom's a bit of it too.
I thought a miracle would just be like replacing a limb or helping somebody see, but I guess that could be considered a miracle.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's Joan of Arc.
That was
what do you think?
Interesting. Really good topic.
Thank you.
Very, fascinating character from history.
Yeah.
Glad you did that.
Much more in depth than I don't know. I just knew that she wore armor and she got killed.
Yeah.
And that's all I really knew about her. So it was quite fascinating.
I remember hitting upon the topic of Joan when we were probably 13 or 14 in school. And I have been fascinated with the Middle Ages for forever. So I did remember that she was from medieval times and she helped in some war. But to learn that she was martyred was new to me. And also to learn that she recanted what she believed and then recanted that she recanted.
Right.
That's very new knowledge to me as well.
Yeah.
I'm a fan of anybody who sticks to their guns to the end, which she kind of did.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that about her. But more than anything, it's just a fascinating story.
Right.
With all the facts of how she knew who the king was when he wasn't dressed as the king. And how she grew up with peasant parents and became this really prominent figure. That's all fascinating.
Very interesting.
Great topic.
Yeah. I thought the same. Very interesting. Yeah. I didn't know that she became a saint. And she didn't fully recant she just admitted that, yes, I hear voices and I claim them to be saints. Okay. So it's funny, the thing that they got her on was that she started wearing men's clothes again.
Yeah, that part I was like,
that was a little technicality.
It was a little kind of dumb.
All right. Yeah, so she was 19, so young.
Super young.
But that's wild. Imagine being 16 years old and going before the king and being like, this is what we need to do. And you did it.
Yeah. That's impressive, but it's also kind of cool because a lot of people today don't know what they want to do with their lives till they're about 30 or 40.
Right, like us.
Yeah. And she found out what she wanted to do when she was 14. Granted, she died 5 years later, but she did that thing,
right?
Which is super cool.
Very interesting.
I can appreciate that about her.
I wish that we knew something more about her family, like siblings, her parents, if they were like, you go girl.
Yeah.
Or if they thought she was a heretic. We don't really know anything about them.
And was she fat?
She's not depicted as being overweight, but why would you think that?
I don't know. Maybe she came from a fat family.
She was a peasant, so I don't know how many peasants were plump at that time.
Well, corn doesn't digest well. So if you're eating a lot of corn, you're going to be bloated.
I think corn came from South America or Central America. I don't think it made its way to Europe yet.
Wheat?
Potatoes? Definitely.
Could be potatoes. Starchy stuff?
I don't know. Next episode is going to be on the diet of medieval people. What did Joan of Arc eat?
Everybody out there, let us know. Was she fat or was she not fat? We'll put a poll up.
I love it. So my new favorite saint.
Great job.
Thank you. On this next part of the podcast, Caleb is going to present to me a conspiracy theory. We like to call this part of the episode Conspiracy Corner.
Love it.
Love it. So Caleb's going to present this theory as if from the perspective of people who do believe it. So he's not going to try and talk me into it or out of it or point out why it's not valid. And I don't know what it is. So go ahead. What's your conspiracy of the week, babe?
So I'm not really presenting it as somebody who believes it, but I'm just going to present it.
Okay.
And let you decide.
Switching it up.
So this is the dead internet theory. Have you heard of this?
No.
Okay. So the dead internet theory claims that most of the internet is fake, as in bots, AI, and auto-generated content. They now vastly outnumber real human users and interactions.
Okay.
So according to believers, So I guess I will kind of come at it from their angle. The real internet died around 2016 or 2017 when companies and governments allegedly flooded the web with bots to control public opinion, push propaganda, and keep us addicted. The theory says that a huge chunk of viral trends, arguments, and even random comments are just sophisticated algorithms arguing with each other. Thinking it's so while we scroll, we're thinking it's all real people, but it's really bots and AI. Platforms and governments deny it, but some researchers say up to half of internet traffic could be non-human. So, is the internet still alive and buzzing, or are we just the few real people lost in a sea of bots and auto-generated nonsense?
Wow. So you want to know my thoughts on that? Or
yeah.
Okay. Well, I've never heard of the theory before. So the assertion was like most of the internet is kind of fake, auto-generated AI.
Up to half of the internet.
Up to half of it. I could see that in some spheres. I think that like news outlets, those are written by mostly real people and things like that. But I could see on sites like X, formerly known as Twitter, that being true. I do know that India specifically, you can pay companies there for engagement through bots, or they literally, I've seen videos of, they'll have like 100 iPhones all connected and plugged in, and they'll make a post and they'll have those iPhones from different accounts all comment on that. And you can even see that on Twitter, where it's primarily in foreign language posts, ones that didn't originate in America, but like Pakistani or Indian, where, you know, there's that post and then you'll have like 80 comments. They're all just a couple words long in a different language immediately afterwards, which then boosts the real poster's engagement. So I could say that I think that most of the actual information or posts or content on the internet is real, but that the comments and the replies and the follows could be fake. I don't know.
I think I agree with you. I think that there are some platforms where it's easier to have a bunch of bots comment and make you a huge person on that platform. But I think it's harder to do that on other platforms like Instagram. You have to like verify with your ID. I think Facebook is doing something similar now. So it's more difficult to do that. But I wouldn't say up to half the internet.
No.
But I would say maybe 10%, 15% of the internet is bots and AI. And I think that'll probably grow.
Right.
But right now, I think 15% is a pretty healthy guess.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's true. I do know that I have definitely stumbled upon websites before where I'm like, this, I think, is pretty much all AI generated. Yeah. Not to say that a actual human didn't then put it on there. I don't think there's a rogue AI machine out there creating a website and populating it. I could be wrong. I just don't know about that. But yeah, I remember reading an article that was posted that was being shared around social media about somebody that I knew in real life. And it was like, oh, I overheard this conversation this person was having in a coffee shop, and here's all the things they said. And the whole article, it was like, I don't know, like 20 paragraphs long. All the paragraphs were like 4 sentences long, all segmented it up. And I'm like, this was written by like ChatGPT. And they were trying to claim there was this conspiracy that some leader or pastor had said all these things. I'm like, I don't know how dumb people have to be to think that this is real, but I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's a real thing. I've come across some like YouTube videos recently that's completely done by AI.
Yes.
The video itself, the images that are pulled from the internet, and the voiceover is AI. And then you look in the comments and there's like 4 people, and each one says like, man, this is crazy. Like AI is taking over the world because no human effort was put into this video. It was just AI.
Yeah.
And that's recently. So there are certain people out there probably running 4 to 5 accounts on YouTube hoping to expand and just use AI content. That's a reality we're living with right now.
Do you think then that qualifies as your conspiracy that like half the internet is fake? Because a human did actually have to go into an AI generator and be like, create, King Kong taking out New York and then post it. Would that be considered fake?
I think so.
Okay.
Because that person is delegating that. And I think that person should only represent one account.
Right.
So even though they have 4 under the control, 3 of those accounts are technically not them.
Yeah. But does like that initial, you know what I'm saying? Like they did.
Like their thoughts.
Yeah, their
created
thoughts.
all 4 of those accounts and all the content on those
yeah.
accounts.
Yeah.
Yeah. I still think that's...
Would that be considered part of the half of the internet's fake?
I guess so. Because I think the hope in that is that one day the AI could do it themselves. And they won't ever have to touch those other 3 accounts that aren't really them. The AI will just have enough knowledge that's been implanted in it that it can run itself. So I think that's the hope of what they're trying to do in the future. And that's why I think this will grow. So that's my conspiracy theory about it.
Huh, I could see that. Yeah. This is kind of on the same topic of people that are more susceptible to not realizing, oh, that's an AI generated video or picture, or maybe I should fact check this information, is typically people that are about 45, 50 years and older. And they believe that is largely due to people of our generation. We're like technically millennials, but born in 94. But millennials and younger grew up, or at least were like young teenagers by the time the internet came around in the context that it is now, where we are able to fact check information. Like even what we hear on the news, we're able to like look that up and be like, huh, that's fake. Whereas nowadays you see people on Facebook, older people, and they're sharing information that's like, oh, this really obviously isn't true. And it's generally the older generation. And they did some studies and they think it's due to the older generation is more susceptible to deception or not having the critical thinking of, oh, this could be fake information, because they didn't grow up thinking that way. Whereas we are able to, as being 31 years old, look at something and be like, huh, that's probably AI. But a 65-year-old person might not have that critical thinking because they grew up, you watched the news, and the news was generally real and correct. Therefore, they're more likely just to believe what they watch on CNN or Fox, and that's the gospel truth. And then they share that on Facebook, and everybody's sharing these same things. And it's like, well, actually, that shark was not in that swimming pool attacking people. That's AI-generated media right now. So I think that's why AI media is doing so well, and even stuff that's more conspiracy or fear-mongering stuff, is because there's half the population's like, that's the truth.
I also think it has something to do with macular degeneration and hearing loss.
That's eyes?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
So
I don't know why I was like, hey, Buzz.
Let me touch my eye. Old people have less good hearing and seeing. And so when you see AI, or when you hear something that's AI, I think it can trick the brain easier. This is something we talked about before, but the reason that we don't view movies that have a bunch of CGI with the same stakes as movies that have a bunch of practical real effects is because our eyes can tell whether the CGI is the same frame rate that we see real life in.
Okay, even subconsciously.
Subconsciously.
Yeah, okay.
Whereas when you start to lose your sight, you can't tell.
Yeah.
And that's why old people are more blown away by CGI than young people. It's because they, something's blurry. You're like, oh, is that actually real?
Yeah.
So I can see that having an effect in a less major way than what you're discussing. But I think it is a small group of elderly people can't even hear or see well enough to tell if what they're seeing on the internet's true or not. Right.
Yeah. Like I saw a post on X the other day where it was like Trump shaking hands with Putin, and it was like, they have come to a ceasefire deal, Ukraine, Russia war. And these like people which their profile pictures present them as being more elderly.
Yeah.
They're like, wow, wonderful news.
The profile pictures from like underneath the chin, and they're looking
Praise
down
God,
at the phone.
you know, and then the community notes is like, this is fake.
Yeah.
You know?
Thank God for community notes on that. I did want to talk about this movie Mountainhead.
Okay.
It just came out on HBO, I think. I just watched it, and it's got Steve Carell and like 3 other dudes.
Cool.
It's pretty profane, but it's a comedy about these 4 guys that go to a secluded mountain spot. They're all billionaires. They stay in this large home over a weekend. And over the weekend, one of them releases an AI sophisticated enough that it can trick the human brain into thinking that the AI, whatever the AI is posting, is real. And so they actually release this while they're up there in that mountainside house, and people start posting their own posts as if what they're saying is the real news and that's actually happening.
Okay.
And war starts to break out because people are so confused as to who's allies and who's enemies, which countries are attacking, what news outlet is real.
Yeah.
AI became so sophisticated that it fooled everyone, essentially. And that's kind of what we're talking about with these old people. So I thought it'd be a fun watch if you guys are...
What's it called?
It's called Mountainhead.
Okay.
If you guys are into the subject we're talking about, go and give it a peep. It's definitely not for kids, but the concept is very funny and really well done.
Interesting. Yeah, AI is taking over the world, huh? Or affecting it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that it's tricky because like I'm not really on much social media, but I do look at X every day, and with like this new war or conflict in between Israel, Iran, and in America, there's these videos and clips being posted of like Iranian missiles making it into Tel Aviv, and, you know, there's fire and stuff. And under every post, like you can type on X and be like, hey, Grok, is this real? And Grok is X's own AI. It's like ChatGPT. And people are making fun of people like, oh, you're just asking Grok, you know, you have no rational reasoning. I'm like, no, it's like we actually nowadays have to, we can't tell. And it was a really blurry video. I'm like, this is fake. And it ended up, it was real of these fires going up in Tel Aviv. I'm like, how did the missiles make it through the Iron Dome? All of this. So now people are mocking people for trying to assess if it's AI. Yeah. And it's like, we just can't really tell anymore.
You're insecure about your AI usage.
Yes.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
That is, oh my God, it makes me want to just destroy computers.
Like, no, but it's like, I don't ever, I'm a lurker on social media, so I don't ever like comment or post on things. But there is an option to click on the post in the top right corner, have it go straight to Grok, which you can just ask privately. Yeah. I'm like, I would never comment for the whole world to say, see, is this AI?
Is this AI? That's
tell
funny.
Me, Grok, you know?
You have to be socially aware enough not to do that.
Exactly, yeah.
God, we are headed to a not good place. That's crazy.
I know.
Great, though. That's my topic. That's my conspiracy theory.
Yeah, so to answer your question, I don't think that half of the internet is fake, but I think a good portion is, especially more on like social media type sites, and I only see that growing. Exactly.
I don't think it's a majority of it's fake, but I only see it increasing.
Yeah.
So same boat.
Great topic.
Thank you. Next, we're going to move on to Myth Time, which is what we named it in one of our last episodes. Yes. And so it's just a terrible name, but we're going to own it. So Myth Time. Christina, what's a myth you have related to your topic?
I completely forgot.
You did?
To look up any myths related to Joan of Arc. I forgot about that. It's been a long week.
All right, you know.
But one myth is that Joan of Arc rode a unicorn.
Oh, so you did have a myth. There you go.
No, I was just thinking of that. That is a myth. That people, because she's depicted sometimes as riding a unicorn. But yeah, she didn't ride a unicorn. So
there you
myth.
Go. Busted. There we go.
That's my really lame Joan of Arc myth.
Next on this podcast, we like to recommend something to our viewers. So what's your recommend for the week, babe?
My recommend is to get outside more. Yeah, this last week we were in Colorado with our family, and we went on hikes most days, and just being in nature a little bit away from people was so good. And I typically have my AirPods in my ears probably 8 to 10 hours a day, honestly, depending on the day. Always listening to podcasts or information like, Joan of Arc and the unicorns and things like that. And because I was with family, I had much less. I was not listening to podcasts constantly because I was out hiking. And it was so good for my brain. And we all know that, like, it's good not to be on media or constantly intaking information, but to actually interact with real people around you or just observe nature. And yeah, so get outside, go on a walk without your headphones in, look at the stars or a tree, and it's my recommend.
Good recommend.
Thank you.
My recommend is mocha lattes. We had a couple of these while we were on vacation. One specifically, it's called the Smoky Mocha Latte at Dark Heart in
Loveland,
Colorado. And it was so good. We've had them for the past couple of years. We just keep returning to this place. And I can't get over how good it was. Yeah. And we had one on the way out, too, from Lima Coffee, just a regular mocha. And it was so good with their ham and cheese croissant. One of the best ham and cheese croissants we've ever had. So
yeah. So when it's 90 some degrees out.
Oh yeah.
Get your iced mocha.
Iced mocha specifically.
Yes, very good. Yeah. Although Dark Heart Coffee, it's amazing coffee, but the coffee shop itself would have been burned at the stake for heresy in Joan of Arc's time. They very much lean into the darkness.
Yeah.
So if one is sensitive to dark subject matter, maybe get your coffee to go and don't look at the little like monster thing taped to the ceiling.
Yeah, it would definitely be Joan of Arc. Yeah. Absolutely. So I wanted to mention we have an upcoming sticker giveaway.
Yes.
We'll put it on the screen hopefully, but we just came out with our own sticker. And for people who want to get entered into that giveaway, we'll have details on that next week or the following week. You'll get a sticker for free. It's a beautiful little chicken. And, well, we'll have a picture on the screen. So look out for that. We also have a newsletter coming out the first Wednesday in July. We're going to start releasing it monthly, the first Wednesday of each month. But we've been working on it for the past 2-ish months and getting a lot of reviews from people. So if you want to get signed up for that, email us at stuffthatwelike@gmail.com. We can get you plugged in with that.
In the newsletter, it's just kind of a collection of a variety of different things or stuff that we like a new recipe or a song Caleb wrote or a movie we watched. So it's just kind of a readable version of our podcast or things that are too short to mention. But yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. We're going to have drinks that we like, food that we like.
Travel guides.
Christina's been writing the travel guide for a little bit now, so we'll have that on there. We'll have people that we like sometimes highlighted, some people in our lives.
People we don't like. So don't get on that list.
Yeah, that'll be at the very bottom of the article. People we hate.
Yeah.
It's a new podcast we're coming out with.
Somebody you don't like to be added in the newsletter.
You could nominate them. That's awful. Whoa, man. If we ever started like a people we hate podcast, that would be terrible. Anyways, you guys can contact us with questions or topics you'd like us to discuss at
Stuff That We Like, Enjoy.
No.
Is this an email or the
Gmail? Yeah.
Gmail. Okay. Stuff That We Like podcast @gmail.com.
Follow this podcast and give it a like on Apple and Spotify because it helps us out. Follow Christina on Instagram at
See Joyfully.
She has a show segment we started doing called Stuff You Missed. We're going to do another one this Friday. This last Friday's was actually just a highlight from our own podcast, but still entertaining. Look out for those on Fridays. It had several
myths in it that
did.
Caleb actually looked up
Myths
instead of making
sweat.
up on the spot.
That's right. You can find that on Instagram at
Stuff We Like Enjoy podcast.
Stuff that we like podcast.
I feel like we should just get rid of that.
Maybe. You can follow me at Caleb C Media on Instagram, and I do freelance videography and photography, so you can contact me on Insta or at Caleb M. Castaneda @gmail.com if you want to book me. I also write music and came out with a song this last week, so you can check that out on all platforms under Caleb Castaneda. Lastly, we have a video and podcast company that helps showcase churches in Kansas City in the U.S. If you'd like to get your pastor on that podcast or need video done for your church or Christian nonprofit, contact us at
moodwavemedia@gmail.com.
And that's all we have, folks.
What's the name of your song? You don't remember?
I Know You're With Me.
I Know You're With Me.
Yeah.
You want to sing a little bit?
No.
No? Just...
There's not really a bunch of singing in it.
We'll just do your vocals. The little... Go for it. I'll sing with you. You ready?
Why don't you give it to me? Yeah, you do it. You do your impression of me doing it. That's it. That's exactly what I do. Thank you for doing that, babe. I appreciate you. And we will see you guys next time.
All right. This has been Stuff That We Like / Enjoy. And at least at this point in time. Bye.
Bye.